stars be with you.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Energetic Principles podcast for episode 5 of our Saturn Neptune series here. And today we have Aerin Fogel joining us. Thank you for joining me, Aerin.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah. And so I'm excited to talk to Aerin here today. I actually met Aerin at NORWAC this year up in outside of Seattle in Washington. And NORWAC is always a good time. And you meet new folks that, you astrologically jive with. And Aerin just happened to be one of them. So I'm excited to bring you on the podcast here today and talk about a wonderful topic, just wonderful, that Aerin brought to the surface, which is about dismembering and remembering. And oh my God, it sounds gruesome. My Scorpio rising loves it. But I'm really feeling that topic for this Saturn Neptune energy that is coming up, and really just this dance that we've all been doing between Pisces and Aries. It kind of feels like, Aries does have that. Aries has that Martian gruesome quality to it too, and then like going back into Pisces and yada yada. We'll get there, but Aerin's going to share a little bit about the myths of Helle and Medea here today too, which I'm excited about because I dabble in the Greek myths. I'm a dabbler.
I'm a dabbler too. I would say I certainly don't know them all. Full disclosure.
Full
So I
disclosure.
dabble.
I'm no expert, but I do dabble and I find interest. I would be willing to say you know more than me. So in the dabbling hierarchy, you are you were a little bit up here. So I'm excited to hear more about these stories and to dissect them, I guess, pun intended, dismember them.
Dismember them, remember a few.
Yes, absolutely. So before we get started here, Aerin, share a little bit about yourself with the listeners. Tell them who you are.
Yeah, so I live in Toronto, Canada. I've been a practicing astrologer for about 13 or 14 years or so. I also practice tarot and channeled work called core pattern readings. And I play music and lots of other community type work and stuff like that. I'd say astrologically, I'm sort of a blend of a bunch of things, like many astrologers are. But I really do appreciate the mythic perspective with a lot of, I love technique as a foundation, but the mythic kind of soul work is really what speaks to me, especially because I do lots and lots of consultations. So it's really like what's actually going to be helpful for someone's life when they sit down to talk to you.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and you just got back from Jason Hawley's Living Astrologies conference. How was that? Tell us a little bit about that experience.
It was immensely beautiful. For anyone who hasn't heard about it, it's a brand new conference that my friend Jason has started. So the intention of it is to be for the practice and learning of embodied astrology. So it was structured a little bit different from a traditional conference where it was more workshop based, like almost kind of partway between retreat and conference. So we were doing full day workshops meant to really give people a deeper understanding of a lot of astrological concepts and information that we might understand with our left brain or cognitively. But I think when you really start to get a deeper embodied experience of what those concepts actually are, what astrology really is, it just opens up so much as astrologers. So it was really beautiful. And I felt lucky to be part of it. I was teaching a workshop on the houses, which was quite special. So there will be another one, not next year, but I think 2027, there will be another Living Astrologies.
Oh, I love it. Yes, I danced in between. Do I do this? Do I go to that? I already did NORWAC, but the embodiment part of it, like that's why I always love being in a Jason Hawley lecture, because it's not really a lecture per se. it's a journey, it's a story, it's a you stop, you pause, you take in, you bring it into you bring it into the body, and then it solidifies. And that's, I mean, sometimes you can be in a million different like classes or lectures, and then if you're like me, you'll be like, oh, I get this, or like look this, and it's there, and then next day you're like, what did I learn, or how did that? And
Exactly.
every single time I connect with Jason's teachings, there is something that I remember forever. Like it just sticks with you. And I think that is part of that embodied practice that Jason brings forward. And so it's great. There's a conference that is connected around this too.
Yeah, so I'm quite similar, like maybe because of the way my Mercury is, who knows, but I'm not ever going to be the person in the room who retains the most information. Some things will go in one ear and out the other. But then there are some things that I will like think about or work with for like years at a time, just like one little piece, and then it goes in really deeply. So I like that approach to astrology for that reason, because like you said, sometimes there will be something that strikes a really deep chord or like a new insight that you gain that stays with you for a long time.
Yeah. I feel like this is a like a PSA to all of the people that learn astrology out there, is that release the pressure to have to know it all or do all the techniques or
Oh
do
my
this or do
God.
that. There's so many out there. It's almost like grab onto the ones that stick with you, that
Yeah,
really want to become part of the practice, or your curiosity won't let go of it. And then that's your angle. That's the rabbit hole to go down. So
exactly. Exactly. And depending on what you're doing with your astrology, like if you're doing consultations, in my experience, people don't want to hear about their ZR level. They don't know what that is most of the time. They don't want to know about what Fradaria they're in. They've never heard of that. So they just want to hear about their lives. So the technique helps us give them a deeper, more informed perspective. So it's helpful in terms of our preparation and understanding, but not necessarily in the actual unfolding conversation in terms of like what we're sharing with someone.
yeah. Well, and I really think this is a segue into our topic here today about that, as we lean into the idea of myth and then what it brings to our life or our understanding of the planets or transits. Because I think if people are going to connect with something, especially in a consultation space, it's likely to be more about a story or a myth or something they can relate to in that level than a particular technique, or like you said, like, your ZR is here and you're on this level and you're training. You're like, what does that mean? And but if you tell someone a story,
Mhm.
and you take them on a ride of narrative, a lot of times people can grasp onto that and then find what their experience is in these like timeless stories. So I'm curious, Aerin, what drew you to Greek myths, and have you witnessed their power and impact in your life and your astrological practice? How does that show up?
Yeah, I think I've always had a very deep relationship with story in some way. I was like a very imaginative kid. And I also I grew up Jewish, and there's a lot of myths in Jewish tradition as well. So I kind of grew up like hearing particular stories from our culture. And then I was a writer for many years. I don't do a lot of writing anymore, but when I was younger, I was like, I'm going to be a professional fiction writer. And then I was like, oh, maybe not. It's a little tricky as a job. But it was part of my I think exactly like you're saying. I understood from a very early age that people can often understand their lives better in story than they can looking at it head on.
Mm.
And I studied literature in university, and I wrote fiction and creative nonfiction. And then at some point in university, I started studying astrology. And my first teacher, the wonderful Julie Simmons here in Toronto, taught me astrology as a mythic perspective, essentially. So she had has a book called, I think, I'm gonna bungle the name. It's like Astrology's 12 Great Myths or something like that. And it's essentially an introduction to astrology using 12 archetypal mythic stories. And at that time, I didn't know any astrology really, other than like I knew that I was an Aquarius sun, and sometimes I would read my horoscope. But reading that book, it gave me such a deep, immediate understanding of the signs because I had a relationship to the stories that she had connected with them. And so for me, myth has always been part of astrology. So I kind of went on to just learn as much as I can in the years that have followed and ongoing. I just read as much as I can of the Greek myths because they're really connected with our tradition. So, as astrologers, those are kind of stories that we can easily anchor into, I find.
Yeah. I mean, when we think about how we describe the planets, we're not saying big, big red over there past asteroid town. We're saying Jupiter. And so who's Jupiter? And where do we get the planets are essentially steeped in the myth of, more of our giants here. But there are all these other characters that are even interweaving with the stories of, say, Jupiter or Mars, or even what we're going to share here today has a little flavor of Aries in it.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so it's all intertwined, and I know that it's so funny because it's like if you like a soap opera, if you like if you're one of those people who can binge, something that has like 20 series, your General Hospital is basically like,
Love Island, maybe.
yes, Love Island. Okay. I know. I'm like, let me give an 80s reference, all the young kids are like, what? General Hospital. But yeah, like Love Island or something. Love Island's a
Yeah.
good one, especially there are lots of love stories, romances,
It's like a Greek myth,
trickery. Yeah.
basically.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. It is rated R in
Yeah.
the Greek myths.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I do feel like that's how astrology must have begun. We don't know exactly, but we do know that at some point, the Egyptians and the Babylonians, at least, were looking up at the sky and telling stories about what was happening. Even just like the story of the sun god for the Egyptians falling off the
Mhm.
western horizon and journeying through the underworld every night and being renewed in the morning. Those were stories that we began to tell about what we could see in the sky. So that really is what astrology is for me, I think.
100%. 100%. So, all right. Well, so if we think about like back to our theme of this, the current impending Saturn Neptune conjunction, can we recognize certain myths, or are there anything coming out, maybe even beyond, Helle and Medea that we're going to be talking about here a little in just a few minutes, but or how do I phrase this question? It's like just recognizing the myths and what it is we see. Like, how do we even go about that, or what would we even be looking for, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a right or a wrong. There are definitely some particular myths that have already astrological associations. Zeus is Jupiter and Kronos is Saturn, like that kind of thing. So there are really accessible ways that when there's a planetary transit going on, we can look to the stories of those planets. So if we're in a Saturn Neptune experience, we would look to stories that involve Kronos and Poseidon, who were father and son in myth. So even that is already an
Mm.
interesting beginning point for us. Kronos is the father of Poseidon. Poseidon is one of the several children who was swallowed by his father Kronos. And then forced to be vomited up by Zeus, who returned and challenged his father. So, there's already like so much rich symbolism in there that we could start with as like a Saturn Neptune thing. But then I think when you reached out to me about this conversation, I was deep in thought about Helle and Medea, which are not particularly, they're not necessarily associated with a Saturn
Mhm.
Neptune conjunction. But the feeling of their stories has been really present with me as we've already been in this Saturn Neptune journey. And I am a Saturn Neptune native myself, so I
Ooh.
understand the feeling of them in an embodied way, like speaking of embodied astrology.
I love that you bring that up because that is something that I was thinking about. Are you near, you're near the conjunction, right?
Yeah,
Am
but
I
I'm
correct?
so early. Like I'm early 1988, so it's like they're still 9 degrees apart, but it's like Saturn just dipped into Capricorn. And for most of the year that I was born, it was back in Sagittarius where it officially made the conjunction with Uranus.
Mhm.
But they're loosely in an applying conjunction in my chart. And then it was, yeah, like late, very end of the 80s, early 90s when they were actually conjunct.
Yeah. So if any of you were born around, Aaron's time, this is what, Robert Blatchke would call a holographic
Yes.
transit, which is, I find them very powerful when we repeat our own natal synodic phases with the planets. So you might notice if you are Saturn Neptune people out there, especially with an impending conjunction, this is going to be a very important time in your life where things are linking up, maybe in a mythic way. You're developing your own myths, or there's just bigger life stories or pieces of destiny that are under play. Um, I'm a Saturn Neptune person too, but I'm a square. I'm a closing square Saturn
Mm.
Neptune, so I have my own relationship with it. But just a little bit different. I have to say, when the closing square was taking place, boy, did my life change. Like, there was so much going in my life when that holographic transit took place. So I love that you bring that up because it is just a little, if you're one of those people, just FYI.
Yeah,
FYI.
powerful.
So let's get into our story time here.
Mhm.
So Aerin, take us on a journey of the myth and these myths. I guess we could do Cliff's Notes version perhaps, or however you see fit to share them.
Yeah, I'll try to give the Cliffs Notes because the way that I've been thinking about this particular story is kind of parts of a few different stories. So there's a dismembering and a remembering, even in the way that I'm picking apart the pieces of this story, which begins with the siblings Phrixos and Helle, who are children with a kind of evil stepmother. She wants them to be gone because she wants her own children to be heirs to the throne. And so she makes up a false prophecy. She stops the crops from growing in a kind of Demeter-like way, even though she's not herself a goddess. And she makes up this false prophecy that to get the crops going again, their father has to sacrifice their lives. And he's like, okay. And so he's about to go through with this sacrifice of his children. And at the very last moment, there's a golden ram that swoops in and saves them. That was sent by their cloud mother, who's like, sending an intervention from wherever she is. Sends this golden ram that swoops in, collects them on its back, and begins this long journey of flight across the sea, which essentially, like if we're looking at a modern day map, is like from Eastern Greece, like over to Turkey, roughly. And that was like the edge of the world to the Greeks at that time. But somewhere in flight and somewhere halfway through the journey, Helle, the sister, falls into the sea. And there's different perspectives on why that may be. She's lost down there. Phrixos lands in the kingdom of Edes and is sort of welcomed in and sacrifices the golden ram to Edes as a kind of offering. And he's taken in and he marries Edes' daughter. Um, and this fleece now from this beautiful, like magical golden ram, this fleece is now proudly hung in a grove in Edes' kingdom known as the Grove of Ares. So we are already in a martial kind of story here. We find ourselves with this golden fleece in the grove of Aries. Later, another one of Edie's daughters is the witch Medea, who is known for her like special relationship with Hecate, and she's quite powerful in and of herself. Some people might be familiar with the story of Jason and the Argonauts, who come along and they want that fleece for themselves. And Cupid strikes an arrow through Medea's heart, and she falls hopelessly for Jason and is willing to do anything she can to help him win this fleece, which she does at all costs. And there's different versions of the story, but in one of them, she ends up, her and Jason kill Medea's own brother. And as they are fleeing Colchis with the fleece, they're back on the Argo and they're like fleeing back across the sea with her father in pursuit. She's dropping pieces of her dismembered brother into the water behind her because she knows her father will stop to pick them up and it will slow down his pursuit. So, and there's many other parts to the story of Jason and Medea. Um, but it's really the back and forth across the sea that kind of caught my mind, because the ram brings the children from one end of the sea to the other. So there's this kind of dismembering of taking the children from where they belong and bringing them elsewhere. And one of them is lost along the way. And then there's many decades later a further dismembering of like taking the fleece itself out of Colchis and Medea out of her home, with the dismembering of her brother along the way. So there's kind of this bizarre trade of the siblings that gets mirrored in this story. And so I have more thoughts about it, but maybe I'll just kind of pause
Yeah.
there.
I mean, yes, it's so funny how like myths connect to other myths and like immediately when you were sharing about the evil stepmother, I was just thinking about like how many trickeries of the evil stepmother are up there. And I was thinking about the myth of the evil stepmother, what is that? What does that even
Yeah.
mean?
Yes.
I was like I was on like a myth nesting doll situation going on here. I was just like unraveling. Okay, all right. And yeah, yes. So that took me somewhere, but and then I was also thinking about the golden ram coming
Mhm.
in, and I was thinking about, a lot of times Neptune can be associated with miracles coming out of nowhere. And you think about like if you're almost about to be sacrificed, which is also very Neptunian. And then all of a sudden, I love the word that you used, a cloud mother. Is that a thing? Or is it you just
Oh,
said cloud mother for
I forgot half the phrase. She's like a cloud nymph. I'm quite sure. Again, sometimes I'm forgetting her name. I'm pretty sure it's Nephele, but I could be wrong. But she's a cloud nymph, and she doesn't live with them. So she sends this ram to them to help them, but it has the flight. So yeah, even just what you said, like that piece about miracles feels so Neptunian. The ram flying back and forth over the sea feels like an Aries Pisces kind of
yes.
thing to me for sure. So yeah, there's already like so many layers in that nesting doll.
Oh yes, that whole bit about come on, a golden ram is going to show up in this miracle last minute moment to
Mhm.
take you across the sea to a new land.
Yes.
There's a sacrifice along the way because apparently Helle, I don't know. Maybe her legs don't have good grip. Maybe there was a gust of wind that knocked her to her demise. Who knows? Maybe she lives under the sea with Neptune now. I don't know.
That's one of
But
my theories is like she dropped herself down there. And yeah, there's different perspectives on it. But even just like you're saying, that feeling of the 11th hour is such an Aries kind of feeling too. Like something new being initiated out of crisis in the
yeah.
11th hour is very much an Aries theme, I think. And the possibility both of all being lost and also of great miracle is so Pisces on the other side of this like little axis that Saturn and Neptune are making.
Yeah. So even that first part of the story was like, wow, there's just so much to take from here. And then
Mhm.
of course, Phrixus gets to the new land and is has to make another sacrifice. Oh, the poor ram. And
No,
I
I hate that part.
know. Why would you a beautiful golden ram that saved you in your dire need and you know but who knows? Who knows? Maybe the sacrifice, maybe the ram was like, take me. That's what I'm here for, kind
Yeah,
of
but
thing.
this, yeah, like the sacrifice is such an interesting part of all aspects of this story because the father is ready to sacrifice the children to begin with.
Mhm.
And the ram is what intervenes on that sacrifice and then is sacrificed in the end. Medea sacrifices her brother to have the love of Jason. Like there's so much sacrifice in this story, which also to me feels like a Saturn Neptune theme.
Yeah, absolutely. There's like, there's the desire of either the desire of what you want to come next or the need for survival, which are
Mm.
both very Aries kind of qualities, like I want to embark on this new quest and this new way of being in life, or I have to survive and I have to do this thing in order to do that. Maybe that is part of the ram sacrifice as well, in order, if you're a foreign person in a foreign land and, you got to do what you got to do to gain favor, especially of someone who's in charge and has some, makes me think of like emperor qualities, you know, uh,
Yes,
if we
Edie's
follow the
definitely
tarot.
has emperor qualities.
Yes, exactly. Um, so yeah, okay. And then so part two, I do remember Jason and the Argonauts. So, it brought me back to the if anybody's seen the famous film with the
Actually.
you haven't seen
No,
it
isn't that a
with
travesty?
oh
I
my
don't watch a
gosh.
lot of movies, but it should be right up my alley.
I watch it just for, get a Sunday afternoon when you just have a little bit of time. And it's got wonderful, I can't remember, oh, what's his name? Ray something. He did a lot of like stop action, and like stop action animation and claymation stuff. He also did Clash of the Titans, I believe, and a handful of different ones. But like the famous scene of all the skeletons fighting Jason, and like it's if you appreciate vintage cinema, it's a great one. But that's when the story started coming back to me. I'm like, oh, okay, yes, no, I do know a bit about this. So I want to hear your thought. You're like, I have a bunch more thoughts on here. So start weaving me into Aaron's brain around these two.
Okay, well, first of all, sorry. But yeah, I've been thinking about the relationship between Helle and Medea, even though in those myths there is no direct correlation between them. Um, because the children are brought across the sea on the back of the golden ram. And when Jason brings Medea on the Argo, it's described that he like sets out the golden fleece for her and seats her on it to take the
Mm,
journey. So it's described like how she is seated back on the fleece as it's about to make this passage back in the other direction. And there is already this kind of profound parallel of like one sibling being lost at each end as the journey is taken, but like there's a gender swap of like which sibling is being lost. But it made me think about cynotic cycles, right? We were talking about how I'm part of the most recent Saturn Neptune conjunction that took place 30 something years ago. And then we have these cycles that we know repeat, but each time there's a conjunction or a square, an opposition or whatever it is, of course, everything is going to look different contextually. So the cycles are repeating, but we're not having the same experience every time we go through them. Something is the same and something is different. So this story feels a bit like that to me, as if Medea is an initiated version of Helle because Medea works with Hecate. Like she's in the underworld. She's a being of the night. And to me, that's where Helle goes. You know, if she dies, she goes to the underworld when she drowns. But who knows? You know, she may actually be falling into some process of initiation,
Mm.
that Medea then kind of emerges as a reinitiated version of her. And arguably in Medea's story, for some people she has a tremendous amount of power. Some people feel she's totally powerless, but it is a different circumstance that she's afforded than what Helle had in the first place.
I love that. I love the expansion of the myth because when a character's story ends, especially in a world that is, I mean, I would say run by magic. Like with myth and magic are like right hand in hand because so many things happen in myths that are, in our realistic life, that would ever happen type of thing. So I love the extension of what Helle's story could possibly be, to have been had potentially been rebirth and sort of like perhaps like this alchemical process to become what Medea is. And I mean, what I know of Medea is, as you said, being aligned with Hecate and just the I mean, she's like the witch of myths. Not
Yeah.
completely. There's a couple different witches that live in mythland,
Powerful.
but yeah. So I was thinking about that too in relation to sort of this Neptunian, otherworldly trickery, playing with magic, also deception and underhandedness. Because isn't that part of Medea's story to get Jason out, right? And even like tricking the father with the dismembering of the body, like, oh, if I play this strategy, he's gonna have to like pick up the pieces, or even just sort of the Neptunian the haze or the fog, especially when it comes to love and being under the spell of Jason, the spell of Cupid. There's so many Neptune themes here.
Yes, the way that Medea loves Jason is so like she must have a Venus Neptune conjunction or something. So it's so through the idealization of Neptune, like to see the vast possibility of what could be that can be so magical, but can also be a little bit illusory too, like you're saying.
Yeah, I wonder, in our mythical Medea chart, we'd have a Venus Neptune conjunction, and then
Yeah, let's do the
and
chart.
then Saturn would come around and make the conjunction on her Venus and Neptune. Maybe after this, like Saturn's impending, and she's like, "I'm gonna do this," and they because
Yeah,
their
later in the
story goes,
story.
yeah, later in the story. That's what,
Saturn is going to make that conjunction if you know the rest of the story.
yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't quite, just work out, but, I feel like in myths, a lot of times things don't necessarily work out. They work out and then they don't work out. That's the beauty of the myth is that it's so aligned with life. It's like no one's life is a happily ever after situation. It just isn't. But you
Yeah.
have your moments. You have your moments like when you're saved by the golden ram and you make it across
Yeah.
not so much when your stepmother wants to sacrifice you, like
Exactly. And maybe that's part of why I love Greek myth so much is that like it's so honest about grief and loss.
Mm.
And I don't know that a lot of our modern myths are. So in a way it feels more real to me sometimes. But yeah, there's that feeling of the reality of Saturn meeting the possibility and the dream of Neptune. And I think that's the tension in their synodic cycle. Saturn and Neptune is like this difficult conversation between possibility and reality, essentially, which feels like a kind of dismembering and remembering. So that's why I had been thinking about it in that way. It's like there's tons of dismembering in this story, and there's the loss of Helle on the initiation of the journey, but there's a remembering of possibly what she was meant to be or who she could have become through Medea's life. And I think Medea has her own versions of that too.
Yeah. That's because when we think about the dismembering, it's not necessarily literal body parts. It's this picking up apart pieces of ourselves. And like I feel like that's what I really resonated with when you brought up those two terms together when we were discussing the topic. Was I was just thinking about the quality of remembrance. And remembrance doesn't happen unless we forget or we are cut off from something, or like or even dismember to make space for the remembering of
Mhm.
who we are. It's not always a past thing too. Sometimes it's like remembering the essence of the soul and all the potentiality, so that the next stage of life or the next chapter of the story um can be realigned with like the truth of one's spiritual self or journey. And I feel like this is a big part of this Saturn Neptune um conjunction, is just going through that, like going through the dismemberment process so that the remembering can begin.
I think that's so true. Yeah, like there are things that are dismembered in our lives, like, a loss that we don't want, or something that we've worked hard for that doesn't really come to be. And those can often feel senseless or totally beyond our agency. And then there are also things that we intentionally dismember. We all have some kind of like foundation of self that we've built, which is a very Saturn thing. Like we build these structures of self that are not always actually in our best interest. So to dismember structures of self can actually be extremely liberating and cathartic. And like you're saying, it makes space for all of the possibility of what's on the other side, or all these like realms of potential of our being that we otherwise wouldn't have a chance to access in the kind of limitation of Saturn's realm.
Yes. Yes. Well, okay. So, right when we were about to get on this program, um, I had an image of this tarot deck that I have called Tarot Volatile. If you're a tarot lover like I am, I highly recommend it. But I'm gonna share the card here. I don't think it's gonna pick up that well on my so I'm gonna share the website. Oh, it's doing a thing. But
Oh,
I saw this dismembered body, and it's a pretty gruesome card. Like if you got this in your spread, you'd be like, hold on, excuse me, what's gonna happen here? Um, but I did want to share it in a little more detail because I think it really exemplifies some of the things that we are talking about in this dismemberment for remembrance. And actually what Aerin was just saying of like severing these parts of ourselves that we have come to maybe rely on or identify with, but to what good. And really, I love the term that they have here for this card. It's the Five of Vessels in the Terra Volatile deck. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the picture of it. But it talks about we cannot speak of this theme without mentioning the concept of ego death, many times explored in analytic psychology. This dark process of death and rebirth is a phase of self surrender and transition that refers to fundamental transformation of the psyche. This humbling effort is part of the symbolic death in which the ego must die before we can be spiritually reborn. And I love, if you look at this card, you can see, the executioner is holding the head of the man that has been dismembered here. And I love that he turns the head towards the body, so that the body can then see the head, which drives everything essentially, from a different perspective. Because I think that's also a very Piscean thing, end of a cycle thing, a Neptunian thing, a hanged man theme. It's like this different spiritual perspective. Um, and it even talks about like, so at the end, it says, his sword implies that a difficult sacrifice must be done consciously. We know we need this. We just have to find the courage to act. Very Pisces, Aries.
Mhm.
Because in alchemy, to be made whole, one must be torn apart first. And I don't know. I don't know about you, Aerin. Do you feel do you feel in this climate that you're being torn apart in some way, shape, or form? Are you recognizing that in your client work or
I mean, yes. Short answer, yes. It feels quite profound, and extremely challenging. Like, I actually don't know anyone who is doing completely, totally fine right now. There's some kind of severing, dismemberment process, some version of that taking place in everyone's life that I know, and all of the clients that I've been working with. So that card feels so perfect to the astrology and to our conversation, even just like Saturn and Neptune will finally meet in Aries and it's a severed head and Aries rules the head. Like, even just like the the literalness of that, but also that card is speaking about the death of the king and the death of the ego. Um, which, I wouldn't say that like Aries is the sign where ego lives, because there's a version of that in every sign in the zodiac, but it's the sign that has to do with self and identity. And so there is a necessary formation of ego that happens as development of self. That's like a healthy psychological structure. We have some ego sense of self as we develop and grow. But a lot of the time that becomes, you mentioned the sort of survival nature of Aries earlier. It becomes a survival mechanism. And then at a certain point in adulthood, maybe we have to destructure and restructure some of what those defenses are. It's not really our self anymore. It's just something that helped us survive at a certain point.
Mm, yeah, and what helps us survive is essentially what we then stabilize because it's our way. What you think of very Aries Taurus, and to some extent, like you find your mechanisms of survival that work for you, and then you stabilize them so you can find some sort of security or comfort within those machinations. So it's also interesting in this write up here. It says this act of dismemberment compromises the habitual body stability. And which is interesting if we even bring in the fact that, Uranus is playing a bit of this here and it's about to move back into Taurus. And so we've gotten a lot of our own stability shake up through that elongated transit as well. And then actually Uranus, and Saturn squaring in the previous years here. So for a lot of us, it's, are not our first rodeo with these outer planet maneuvers, from hard angles. Um, but yeah, it just makes me I mean, I definitely feel it. And dismemberment is not always literal too. I mean, a lot of people could be going through things like maybe they lose a job and that like, that was a limb of their life. And then it's like, well, who am I now that I'm not playing this role any longer? Especially if you've been doing it a long time, say you're, close to retirement, or maybe even if you're just retiring and you're not losing your job. It's like that gets severed away, but then you have to go through this process of like, well, who am I without that piece? Because there's so much that is crumbling or falling, through a fallen Saturn in Aries or through the disillusion of Neptune just as a planet. And so, how do we come back to that? I feel for me, it's a lot of like an emotional content. It's like dismembering emotional parts of myself that actually keep me from having the courage to remember parts of myself that I want to, uh, you know, journey back into being. But there's an emotional component that has to be dismembered, which, if you're a water sign or if you have any like, pile up of water energy, that reconfiguring emotion and attachment Yeah, it can be difficult, but I think this is part of that Pisces journey and really why maybe this is coinciding with the North Node transit in Pisces and all the eclipses we're getting there. I don't know if you have any thoughts about adding eclipses into this or if you've thought about that added effect, but
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a huge part of how I've been thinking about this time. And I didn't want to, throw too much chaos onto the fire, but like a significant part in it is so there's the Saturn Neptune part of this like dismembering, remembering that I've been thinking about. But then there's the nodal axis part of it as well, because that story is a dismembering of the head. The myth associated with the lunar nodes is a severed head and a body, essentially. So that is generally what eclipses feel like. They disrupt things. There is often a severing effect that happens with eclipses, whether that's something like abruptly ending or a course suddenly changing, taking a left when you thought you were going right, or unexpected things entering our lives that we weren't anticipating. And they have an incredible, I find, speed that they work at too, that can feel very dismembering in the process of it. Like things happen very quickly during eclipses. So that definitely feels like part of it to me. And I like that piece that you brought in with the emotional context, because emotions and memory live in the same place in the brain. And thinking about it in context of our story, it's like, yeah, what does happen for Helle when she goes into the water? Maybe there, I always like to think that she went down there because there was something that drew her in. And what would it be like for us to go into the water rather than kind of flying above it and
mm,
hovering above it, to actually like see what's down there?
that is a wonderful question to pose, especially as we are in the midst of grand water trines right now when this program is being recorded and airing. And, we have an upcoming Scorpio new moon that is going to be configured to all this. So I love that. It's the invitation to drop down in, to plunge in, to sacrifice oneself into the water, knowing that there could be a certain depth or there could be like Ariel. Maybe there's a whole nother world. It's a no, that's a whole new world. Is that Little
World. I,
Mermaid?
I feel like that's more like Jasmine and Aladdin, but I
Okay,
like where
just
you're going
kidding.
with
Yeah.
it. I'm with you wherever it
Yeah,
is.
I'm just, skipping Disney storylines here, but yeah, Disney nesting dolls. But yeah, it's like dropping down because when you were speaking, it had me thinking, especially since we're still in the retrograde process right now, there has to be the crossover back into Aries, when we do the daring thing and once again sit on the ram's skin and cross over, right? But it's almost like that gap in time, sort of what you were saying when you were sharing the stories. You said, and much, much later. And then, so what's in between that much, much
Yes.
later? It feels
Yeah.
like this is that part right now, is that blip, that dive that Hele did, and where it's where it is leading us into this watery realm. And that can be intimidating, especially if you're not a water sign, to have to
Mhm.
dive deep into the waters of the psyche or the unconscious or, things that need to be. I always think about the tail end of Pisces being where, emotional baggage lives. And essentially, when we retrograde back and forth out of Aries and Pisces, a lot of times that retrograde movement and that final I think about the fixed star sheet being there, like it's a dangerous zone to be in, but it also like it had like the intensity of release that has to happen is like the crucial to the plot line. Like we don't want to get stuck there. We don't want to drown there. Yeah.
Yeah, and that also brings to mind this kind of added layer that we're hovering back and forth between the most formless and the most individuated part of the zodiac,
Mm.
really. That tail end of Pisces, like you said, and then the early degrees of Aries. So there is this time period. I love this reference that you've made of like what happens to all the space and the time in between. Maybe we kind of notice the moments of initiation or breakthrough much more clearly. But what is the quality or nature of what we're doing with our time in between? And yeah, are we able to kind of be in that formless state? Because that's what actually gives rise to the initiation of Aries again.
Yeah. It's purposeful just
Mm.
because it's not it's not where, yeah, I mean, so many people, including myself, sometimes we're just waiting for when's that thing gonna happen or when am I gonna get to that?
Yes.
But it's like life does not stop. It's all part of it. All these parts add up to the sum of what's coming and what's been. You gotta so I guess don't get it too impatient for what's to be like, drop down into the sea, get your mermaid on. And
Yes.
now I'm trying to think of I'm trying to think of a Little Mermaid song. I mean, there's so many that
Oh
under
my
the
gosh.
sea,
I'm just, yeah, Under the
under the
Sea.
sea,
Good one. I'm
down
trying to
where
think
it's
of the
wetter.
one. There's like, anyways, I'm not
There's
gonna
one
remember
in
it.
particular though that it's like the main one, and it's gonna haunt me
She's
that I
really
don't.
sad. She's looking at her forks. Is that the one?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh,
She's
oh,
sad and forks.
oh my gosh. I see it. I see it. She's in like the treasure, like her little
Um,
treasure
it's
chest.
like
Oh,
about like being a real, I want to be like I want to be where the people are. That's what it
I
is.
want to
I
be
did
where
it.
the people are. I want to see them dancing. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you
Which
call them? Forks.
is
That's it. Okay,
up
we
where
got
they
there.
run, up where they stay all day in the sun. Oh,
Beautiful. This is
part of
actually a
their
Little
world.
Mermaid podcast now. Yeah.
Yes. So, but
Part of
maybe
their
that's
world.
why part of their world. I can't remember what I sang from Aladdin, but whole new
Whole new
world,
world. You were
part
all
of their
right.
world. I had the world but actually, I love that we just went here with that because that's a big, that I'm getting chills when I think about it. So that's a big part of like Ariel's story in that moment because she has spent all this time collecting the little pieces of the people above or what could be this new world. And she's like she longs to be a part of it, but she also in order to do so, she has to sacrifice so much. She has to sacrifice that treasure trove that she's had, her family, her fins, like and essentially her voice, which is her identity,
Yeah.
in order to be in this new world. So yeah, no, I don't know if I have a fully formed thought with that, but I'm just thinking about some of the themes that we're talking about
I
here.
love that. I feel like I mean, in her habitat, she's Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces in
Yes.
a way. And all of the deep, profound longing that comes along with that too. Like to be at 29 degrees of Pisces is to long for birth, like to long to emerge, to hunger for it. And then she does, and it's like excruciatingly painful. So I feel like actually that's a beautiful story for that cusp in a way. The desire at the edge and then the reality of what the other side actually is like.
Yeah. It's because it is a whole new world, Aladdin.
Yeah, not in a fun way.
Oh my goodness. Well, I love that we segued. I love that we segued off into that. That was fun. Um,
That was right. That felt right. Yeah.
that did. My show tune, my longing for show tunes. Maybe I feel like in another life I would have loved to sing like Disney princess songs.
I feel like you kind of have like a Disney princess. Like I mean this in the best possible way. You kind of have like a Disney princess vibe about you. If like a 70s singer was like a Disney princess, I think that would be you.
Right, sign me up,
Yeah,
Disney. Get the memo. I'm ready. You can
yeah,
do some
right.
CGI on this. We could take
Yeah.
it down a couple decades. It's good. Um, all right. So let's think about some practical takeaways based on what it is that we've talked about here today. Myths aren't necessarily practical per se, but they can lead us to, some sort of understanding that we can then, it's like, how do we integrate this? I guess is the question I have into our Saturn Neptune experience. Do you have any suggestions or things that come up to the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is that we maybe just threw a bunch of information at people depending on how familiar listeners are with those stories. So there might even just be like one little thing that jumps out to someone. And then that's just a great thing to chew on if there was something in particular that jumped out. But maybe it also comes full circle to our conversation about embodied astrology because I one of the helpful ways that I like to work with myth is just sort of placing myself inside of it. And for me, I feel like there are ways in which this story is like alive, almost as an enactment in my own life right now. So making some correlations between what I'm experiencing directly and what's happening in these stories can be really helpful. And then kind of weaving in the astrology of it, like we've been doing. Or maybe people want to just work with Saturn, Neptune as mythic archetypes, period. And like what's being swallowed and what's trying to pour forth and emerge, even that can be like a really great place to start.
So interesting. It's like dismembered and remembered, swallowed and regurgitated. You know?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
All the things
Yes.
going on in my brain.
I know, I love it. I love it. And you had me thinking too when we started out here because, I know these things. I know Saturn was the father. I know that, but I forget these things. And so when even just having like a basic overlay to think about, like, hold on, father is coming around and in the domain of, the suns, whether it's being in Jupiter's sign, meeting up with Neptune and the complex stories about, their birth there. And then then dad falls in some way. If we think about Saturn and Aries and like, what does it mean for those archetypes to, you know, step forward, Jupiter and Neptune both, and then Saturn has some level of crumbling, or dismemberment itself, that takes place. And so I think I'm gonna have some takeaways with investigating that a little bit more. Um, I love thinking about taking these ideas and like maybe I I love mind maps. I don't know if anybody else enjoys a good mind map. But sometimes when you put these little pieces and parts on a piece of paper and you work through things and then you have like little segues and lines that come off and then you can start to make associations and write down maybe even stories about your own myth and your own life of like when have I been sacrificed into the sea? When did I jump into something that had maybe this emotional quality or this like psychological quality that maybe I offered myself to or I wasn't prepared for, and where did that lead me? It's almost like it makes me think of Jung's process of dream work and the active imagination. And it's like, okay, so where do I take this within my own experience? Maybe you become Helle and you drop into the ocean. And then what is she doing? Where is she going? Who does she meet? What comes up? What does she feel? And like bringing it to sort of that imaginal realm to like just connect with the myths more. That could be fun. Like, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like that makes it quite evocative to start to locate those things in our own experience, or like Medea falling for Jason and making some of the most horrific sacrifices to pursue a relationship that doesn't work very well for her in the end. Like, that in and of itself is going to feel so relatable to so many people.
I know. Who
And
hasn't done that?
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I know. Oh, what do you mean? Oh my goodness, that's so funny. Yes, yes. Well, it is, thus is life. Um, well, oh my goodness, Aerin, it was so fun to talk to you here today about myth, about these particular myths, about dismembering, regurgitating, the Little Mermaid, like we were on a journey.
I love
Um,
we went with that. The Little Mermaid felt so right as an ending place. It was good.
yeah, Ariel led us there. Jasmine sort of led us there, but we ended up with
Oh
Ariel.
my God, I just realized, sorry,
No,
Jasmine
what's that?
is like them crossing the ocean on the, she goes on her flying carpet
Oh
ride
yeah.
over on the Golden Ram, and the Little Mermaid is the one down there at the bottom of the sea.
That's right. Jasmine's fall. Oh, maybe Jasmine dives in and then she finds the Little Mermaid. And then that's who knows.
This is like the Disney version of the dismembered and remembered cyanotic cycle, where this one drops off and becomes this one, and there we go, we've solved it.
Oh my God. Or maybe Aladdin falls off and then part was Aladdin on the rug?
Love that. He can fall off. That's fine.
Yeah, he can go. I'm thinking about the brother of like the brother like the trade.
Oh,
Uh yeah,
uh,
who that's funny. All right. Well, we could be here for days talking about making up our own Disney fairy tales, steeped in Greek myth, Greek myth, Greek myth. Um, all right, Aerin, where can people find you? What do you got going on? Give us the scoop.
on the World Wide Web. If people are just listening to audio, my name is spelled a little different. So it's Aerin Fogel. So you can find me on my website, where I do lots of consultation. So I'm always taking new clients. And I, in addition to astrology, do core pattern readings that are channeled work. And I'm on Instagram as Queen of Swords Band, as well as, some of the other things that we've tried to replace Twitter with out there. But if you search for my name, you'll find me. And then I have a newsletter where I send moon mail on the new moons and just like some updates about courses and workshops and stuff that I'm teaching. I will be announcing a couple new ones over the next few months.
Lovely. And so with the website, is the website your name or is the website Queen of
Oh, yeah,
Swords?
sorry. I got halfway through that explanation. It's just Eric. Um,
AerinFogel.com?
yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And I, of course, will link it down here wherever you're listening or watching. So you can just click, boom, go right to Erin's site. All right. Well, where can you find me? You can find me over at energeticprinciples.com, where I too do consultations and have a newsletter. We all do these things, but we all have our own unique takes on them. But if you want to go there, you can find that. But most importantly, you can also find me at tarotofher.com, which are in the midst of our Kickstarter campaign for the second edition. And with any luck, maybe we will have reached our goal by the time this airs. We'll see. But we are 84% of the way to our $22,000 goal right now. And so any help that if you want to pledge for a deck and an expansion pack, that would be wonderful. You can just pledge money if you want to and you don't want anything. You can just make a donation. And most importantly, you can also just spread the good word. I feel like that's how campaigns or, any practice in life is successful, is word of mouth and people sharing. So feel free to share the project. We just got awarded Project We Love by Kickstarter, which is very exciting because it's like, you're in the cream of the crop of the Kickstarters and they give you more promotion. And we were lucky enough to receive that with our first campaign too. So that's super exciting to receive the honor once again. But yeah, tarotofher.com, Tarot of Her Kickstarter, not the Tarot of Her. Speaking of Neptune, all of a sudden this site comes out of nowhere, started in June, called the tarotofher.com. It looks like AI put it together. There's no one,
Oh, God.
like it's different images, but they're like using a lot of our same terminology, like wording to describe the deck. There's no like, and you know what's annoying is it ranks like above our Kickstarters. And I'm like, you.
This feels so Saturn Neptune somehow. That's
It
all.
does. It's
Yeah.
like, look at your hard work. And
Yeah.
you're like, and then, this imposter is going to come along. That's only pieces of someone.
The
No
fake
name.
thing better than the thing that you worked so hard for. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, just some SEO wizard. Yeah, anyways, so don't click on that one. Just FYI. But it just kind of took me back to the Instagram days when everybody was like, everybody was getting imitated and we were all going through that business. I'm sure it still happens, but luckily it's less so these days, it seems.
I've calmed down a bit. One imitator like messaged someone who knew me and they were suspicious and they were like, "Yeah, well, what's the name of your cat?" And the person was like, "Luther, which is my cat's name." And
What?
that yeah, that really freaked me out. Anyways, so some of them got really good for a while.
Oh my God.
They seem to have calmed down.
Well, they better calm down. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do a few spells of my own. Get my Medea witch trickery out and
Yeah,
do some sort of casting boundary
yeah,
banishment. I
I
banish you, the tarot of her.
think that.
Oh my goodness. All right, enough about that. So if you're watching this program on YouTube, please like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Tell us what you think about these stories, or if you find any other myths that are prevalent right now in your life or in this Saturn Neptune conjunction space that you'd want to share. We'd love to hear it. And if you're listening to the audio version, feel free to leave a review wherever you listen to it because it does help us be seen in the algorithm and the search ranks and all that SEO business that apparently I need to brush up on. But but most importantly, share it with a friend, spread the good word. Because I feel like this talk here today, along with the whole rest of the series, has been very eye-opening to many facets of the Saturn Neptune relationship, I guess, because it's not just about the conjunction. It's a whole cycle. It's never ending, but it's been fun to unpack different aspects of these two planets in relationship with one another. So definitely share it around. All right. Well, Aerin, thank you again for joining me. It was a pleasure discussing all things myth and Saturn and Neptune with you today.
Thank you so much for having me. What a great chat.
All right, everyone. Well, go find your myth, get dismembered and remembered because it might be a weird journey. You might ride a ram, you might fall into the ocean, but it'll be worth it in the end. Take care, everyone, and as always, may the stars be with you.